All right, everything that's getting changed out on this main board has been changed out, though there's some further little tweaks to come after I replace the pots. And this 47 ohm resistor is usually setting the bias too hot. And I like them to be between 12 and 14 watts idle, so I'm not talking about 90%. I'm talking 100 to 115% dissipation. This thing is just usually way too much. So I expect this will get replaced with something else. And I've got some resistors on hand. But now it is time to get rid of all these 16 millimeter pots. All right, I'm enlarging all the stock holes to 3/8 of an inch. Step bit does the trick. Just being careful not to have little shards of aluminum scratch the faceplate or anything. Higher quality pots will fit after this and have nice clean holes. But I'll make sure that if I need to deburr them on the other side, I will do that first. All right, one of the stock knobs here, really cheap plastic, kind of a grayish looking beige. This is a much higher quality knob here. The one that's going on here, it's a cream with a bit of a sheen to it. You know, nothing fancy. These things are $1.50 each. You know, just kind of looks much nicer. If you have an amp that you spend this much money on, it's nice to have things that look and feel good. This looks and feels cheap, you know, because it really is. One more pot to install. All done. All the changes made. And the amp is idling about 13.5 watts, which is pretty much ideal. The primary wires are reconnected to these factory stick-on cable mounts. They never really hold. It's kind of crappy. When I do these, I twist the primaries and kind of do a braid here, so you don't have this kind of flopping around. Because the previous guy cut these a little bit short, I couldn't do that, which was my preference. It's almost purely cosmetic. You know, if these things come off and it's moving around in the chassis, it won't hurt anything. It's just kind of nice to have it all neat and secured, which is my preference. New grid stoppers mounted. And when the wooden board, the whole thing mounts to a wooden slider board is in place. You know, if this were to contact the wood is a pretty good insulator. There's no voltage present at these, but I'm not worried about that. That's how a lot of amps are done, and it's very secure. Looks much prettier with the new knobs. I have changed the behavior of the hot and cool switch and the behavior of the bright switch, which I'll do a quick demo of, just in case this is the first video you see of my AC30 mods. And I'll show how the channels blend now that they're out of phase with each other. All right, this is not going to be the real playing part of the test because now that I have played it, the amp's got issues. I'm in the top boost channel. I've got the treble way up and the bass quite a bit down and the cut circuit fully counterclockwise. This should be taking my head off. And it's just a suggestion of that. And if I roll the cut back, it's not giving me all the tone cut that I would expect. Neither, let me put this to a kind of a neutral place, neither is the tone stack here behaving as I would expect. And the normal channel is also much darker. The amp overall is darker than I want it to be. And There's an ugly character as I turn the normal up. Let me play this for you a little bit. I added a modest bright cap to that normal volume. It shouldn't be as bright as the top boost, but it should be much brighter than this. And as I turn it up, there's a gronkiness to it that I'm not going to demonstrate now. It's just too loud. But that should really sound quite a bit more like, oh, let's say this. That's what I would expect the normal channel to sound like, and I would expect the top boost channel to sound quite a bit brighter. Now, this amp came in with all new old stock tubes, or at least older tubes. It had a Brimar in V3 and a GE in V1. I'm not sure what's in V2. And it's got some old Tesla EL84s, which, you know, on paper, or if you read magazines, should be superior. I've troubleshot make sure it's not the preamp tubes at fault. I put some tongue saws in V1 and V3. No change. They sound just like the Brimar and the GE. So I need to go through a couple of things in the circuit that I have not changed because, you know, it measured fine when not in use, but I'm getting sounds I don't expect or that aren't optimal to my ears. And I'm gonna let this whole thing cool off, and I'm gonna try some different EL84s just in case these old Teslas are not optimal. You know, it's one thing for a tube to test well on a tube matcher or a tube tester. It's another thing for them to actually work well in circuit and sound good. And I also think that the B plus is a little bit lower than I would expect by about 20 volts. And I'm wondering if that's having to do with those old Tesla output tubes, which could also explain the overall darker sound that I'm getting. So these things get really freaking hot. And with these spring clamps, I have to wait till they cool off before I can remove them, both because I don't want to burn my fingers and because I don't want to shock any hot glass. So I'm going to put in a quad of tubes that I know are good, that sound good in other amps, and give this another listen. And then if at that point it still sounds like this, then I need to go through and see what components may need additional tweaking inside the amp. And I'm very curious about that cut circuit. Now that may just be an oddity of those EL84s. I changed out the pot for a 250K audio taper alpha pot, and that measured just fine before I put it in. I'm reusing the stock 4.7 nanofarad, which is a ceramic disc, which should be fine in these. It's not the kind of thing which is prone to failure, but they did attach it with the body of the capacitor very close to the solder point, and it's possible that it just overheated. I'll take it out of circuit and measure it and see what the value actually is, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's some other things like, plate resistors, cathode resistors can measure fine when the amp is off, but they just don't do the job under current. So we'll find out what is left to be done.